Predictive coding is a game changer in e-discovery. Advanced technology, coupled with human expertise and a sound workflow, whittles the document collection to its essential parts, the relevant documents or issues. Leveraging powerful machine learning technology with the intuitive workflow designed into iCONECT Exera's predictive review, you can dramatically reduce time and cost associated with legal discovery and the review process. In today's video, we're going to have a very slight peek behind the curtain, as it were, to see exactly how the Predictive Review Wizard automates the predictive review process and management to help ensure no critical steps are missed, as well as how easy and intuitive it is to go ahead and proceed as a reviewer and benefit from this technology. A few things we're going to walk through just to begin. We're going to take a closer look at Exera's Smart Sample, how this is really key in what Exera strives to do, as it automates and expedites the ID of sample training documents, the learning in the system. You'll see how there is minimal project management effort, as well as the ability to greatly reduce the number of iterations that must go through in order to have the engine learn as best it can from your data set. We're going to take a close look at Exera's soft checks and the confidence bars and how those benefit you as a reviewer. We'll see how Exemplar can fit in this. You may recall that from some of our previous videos, the whole notion of the virtualized custom documents and how that can best benefit you in, well, especially in a seated type of predictive review workflow. We'll see how the iView data visualizer, again, another video we have on that, has now been enhanced to provide you with extensive metrics that are very key to understanding how the review process, predictive review process that is progressing. So we'll look at how that demonstrates the precision, the recall, the iteration counts, etc. And most of all, you'll hopefully be able to see how Exera's predictive review has really been designed to be incredibly fluid and flexible to your established workflows. If there's one thing we've learned in discussing predictive review with a number of partners, clients, consultants, etc., in this industry, is there are a lot of different ways people like to approach this, and in many cases it can be a very determined focus from one side or the other as to what they think is the best approach for this. With Exera, we really tried to do what Exera does, be incredibly flexible to you and your needs. Are you into CAL, continuous active learning? Do you really believe in seeding your data set, or is that the best approach for the particular project you're working on? Do you need to shift gears mid-course from more of a control set, training set ID, a little more randomized, to a far more targeted, focused search, etc.? Being able to adjust on the fly is something that Exera does allow you to do, and do so with minimal project management effort. Do you want to be able to come in and do both responsiveness and issue coding at the exact same time? That could be a limitation in some tools that we see, etc. So again, a little bit of background before we jump in and take a good close look at what it is Exera offers. The diagram we have here on screen is a very simple predictive review workflow, and it is just one of many that is supported. But the idea is to show you from its inception how easy this can be. We notice as we look on screen here, the orange icon is an administrative function. Essentially, your administrator does nothing more than create the conceptual and the iView indexes. iView, of course, we can make use of its visualization reporting metrics for all of your predictive review stages. Your project manager steps in and addresses the green areas. Essentially, they will create your coding panels on your predictive review project. Essentially, that's it. Once that project is created, the purple areas, Exera itself, will automate and create your control set for you. The attorney steps in, reviews that control set. One method of predictive review workflow. Exera then steps in and automates, once that control set is done, the creation of the iterations using smart sampling. Again, we'll take a slight closer look at that in today's session. Then the attorney steps back in, reviews several iterations or rounds, as it were, until the review goals are met. Rinse, wash, repeat, essentially, as we walk through. Once those review goals are met, we'll know that because the project manager steps back in, and after every iteration can easily confirm your precision, your recall goals, etc., utilizing iView very easily to see when the review needs to stop, if something needs to be manipulated or changed, etc. But again, a very simple, Easy to use workflow, especially for those that have not yet engaged in predictive review and aren't entirely sure the best approach. In that, Xera provides you a great deal of flexibility and really tries to streamline that entire process. Essentially, there's a system-generated training set. You can imagine all these little orange icons here are records in an index. Random sampling typically kicks off, but when a system relies entirely on random sampling, the review can be inefficient. Sampling can miss certain conceptual corners. If we take a closer look to the bottom right-hand corner of the screen here, we can see those purple documents that have been selected randomly miss an entire section of that data set. And it may take many, many more iterations to effectively cover the database. That's where the strength of smart sampling comes in. Exera utilizes the power of Content Analyst inside. We start by conceptually clustering all of the records. You can notice here in the diagram we have a large number of color-coded areas that are representative of conceptually clustered documents, documents that are very similar to themselves conceptually again. So the records are grouped together by their content. This is powered by LSI, latent semantic indexing. This is not simple text analysis. And the key here is once those clusters are created, the system then randomly samples from that. So Exera will select those documents randomly from each cluster, and that's really key. So the documents all have this conceptual sphere or threshold. The idea, of course, is that enough documents are identified until approximately 90% of the database's concepts are entirely represented in this training set. And you'll notice as we take a closer look here on screen, around those purple randomly selected documents from each cluster, it covers a good sphere. There are other documents that are grouped up within that. Because they're conceptually very similar, Exera already knows what it should do with those documents depending on how they're coded when the attorneys come in and train the system. It gives you just far more coverage within that data set. We'll see when we get inside of the database for a reviewer. Once those smart sample documents are reviewed, the system has been trained, etc., Exera uses that information to soft check the documents within those conceptual spheres and thresholds. Single sampling, as I mentioned earlier, covers approximately 90% of the entire database. What does this do? It drastically reduces the number of iterations or rounds you must go through. Following iterations will then fine-tune the data categorization. Once again, giving you better, stronger results much earlier in the system. Now let's see this in action. I'm in an Exera dashboard, and first the project manager is going to come in and walk through the predictive review wizard. I have my manage predictive reviews option here across the top. As I open this up, we can see I have a couple of predictive reviews that are going on the same project at the exact same time. Again, one of the real keys with Exera is the fact that you do not have to treat a single review per database one at a time. We can do multiple items, whether or not we're looking for responsiveness in a certain area, looking at issue coding in the other. It really does give you the ability to easily classify and review a document for multiple issues, saving the need for multiple reviews of the same document per issue all at the same time. I have a nice little overview. As an administrator, it lets me know how my iterations are going, when they've been kicked off, etc. I have a current one going on with a control set in place here. To give you an idea as to how easy this is to set one of these up. We'll actually grab an inquiry I have in place here. Throw up some values so we can see exactly how this works up. With this particular project, I have provided a name. I can add in a description. We simply pick and choose which panel, which review does this issue deal with, and you have the option to exclude certain documents. Maybe some documents that have already been pre-found, we want to exclude those from the system. Maybe you happen to know you have a large number of spreadsheets, for example, in your particular database. Load those into a simple folder, exclude those from the engine. So we swipe through, we control the confidence level and the margin of error for our control set. This is the set that, of course, is going to kick off and help to serve as effectively the answer key to the database. So the control group serves essentially as the baseline against which all of the results are going to be evaluated from iteration to iteration, etc. Once again, the answer key. Typically, you'll have your experts review the control set for responsiveness and key issues, again to serve as that answer key, and to test benchmarks on how the system learns through each iteration. Automatically, you'll find all those documents in a convenient control set folder. To walk through, this is where we select our iteration settings. The iteration size, how many documents in each one, the simple naming prefix for this, a minimum score. This will tie into the confidence bars as we walk through the system. What score does a document essentially have to receive against that index in order to provide an indication to the reviewer as to where that document or how that document may be coded? If you're going to be using Exemplar, we can manipulate the score related to that as well. And then for your project, what are your goals? Your target precision and recall. This also gives you the ability, if you like to work with continuous active learning, which essentially allows us to focus a little more in on how the documents should be presented back to the reviewer. With active learning, it's an iterative training scenario whereby the system continuously learns by using review documents and targets which documents I want to see. For example, some parties like to only have the attorneys then look at documents that the system has identified as responsive. We can choose that. So here that it'll sort those documents by the issue confidence in a sort order that you've chosen. So it'll take effect once all smart sample iterations are complete. Once you go through some iterations, it will sort that out and present me, I only want to see the responsive documents, versus another workflow scenario whereby you have a lot of project managers that will say, no, 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 I really need to see everything the system's doing. If it's telling me it's non-responsive, I want to look through those documents as well. So this is a simple way to check off, pick and choose your sort order on that. So we walk through, we simply need to create the document batches for our iterations. The value we want to run that off of, field values, quantitative method, etc. And then we decide which status folder will indicate that a document has been reviewed, either at that control set level or once we start going through the iterations, as well as where should the uncategorized documents go in a convenient uncategorized documents folder. This is simply those documents that the system doesn't know enough just yet to make a suggestion as to how it should be coded. And conveniently, when it's all said and done, once the control sets are done, once an iteration is done, which users, which project managers, users, senior attorneys, etc. should be notified on this. That's it from an administrative standpoint. We can see here on a previous review that had been done, the control set had walked through. You'll notice the moment that control set was done, it kicked off and created the next, or I should say, the first iteration. Once that iteration was done, it kicked off and automated and started the next iteration because we had not yet hit our goals. One of the key strengths of Exera is the ability for it to automatically kick off the next stage for you. There is no manual intervention that is a requirement to continue proceeding forward. Once an iteration is done, if we're not yet at our goals, automatically Exera will run through and group up and automatically batch that next selection of documents for the review team to come in and for the attorneys to begin working. From a reviewer standpoint, again, extremely easy, especially if you're at all familiar with a batch-based review, because from a workflow standpoint, not a lot has changed from that familiar approach to your documents. Off of my dashboard, I come in, I open up my batches tile. You'll notice here, we have a series of unassigned batches set in place here. I'm going to grab this one in place, simply working at this stage on my control set. And I'm going to check out that batch. You'll see I now have that assigned as my batch in the system. From this stage, all I simply need to do is swipe in and begin working with my documents. Now I've swiped into my batch here, my control set batch as it were. And as we can see, I have my documents on screen, and I happen to have my predictive review coding panel displaying for me. Now, for anybody who's witnessed or watched any of our previous analytics videos, you understand that we're very keen on using an animals database to discuss some of the benefits of this, because people conceptually understand the difference between a dog versus a fish versus a snake versus a bird. Again, from a demonstration standpoint, it's easy to show off the true power of the engine, especially in a quick video or a quick webinar. In this particular situation, the question or the issue at hand that we are looking to build our index off of, and code for responsiveness, is this animal dangerous to people? Again, I'm working on that control set stage. This is the early set. We're looking to create that baseline against which all of the results, once we start reviewing the various iterations, and the results that come back to us from that analytics engine are going to be evaluated. So essentially right now, we're creating that answer key. As you can see, very simple coding panel. I have a responsive, non-responsive scenario. As we take a look here on screen, we can see I have a Boykin Spaniel. Obviously, a very popular pet, not at all viewed as something that is dangerous to people. So I'm going to code this as non-responsive. We'll see we automate the trigger that this has been reviewed. You may remember from our wizard as we walk through, how does a system know when a document has been coded? Simply off of the reviewed panel. As I mentioned earlier though, I'm going to simply walk through this until my entire control set, all of those batches, are done. Once that is done, then Exera is going to use the result set, kick off the smart sampling, and begin to present us with the iterative review portion. Whereas a reviewer, I'm going to come back in and begin coding the documents for responsiveness. The key, once we get into that iterative review, as I mentioned, of course, is we're going to begin to see the benefits as the system learns more and more. It'll present us with confidence bars and soft checks to indicate where those documents may fit. As I also mentioned, one of the strengths of Exera is the fact that we can do multiple reviews at the exact same time. You may notice there's a second predictive review panel in place here. And in this scenario, we had been coding, and we'll imagine that we're looking for a slightly different question. Would this animal make a good pet, as it were? You'll notice as I come over onto this box jellyfish document, slightly different record in place here. When we start focusing through our various iterations, we see a few different things going on. Again, much different than that control set, which essentially I come in and I just code the documents. We happen to have a confidence bar located here next to my non-responsive. Again, the question being, would this be a good pet, a non-responsive issue? We see a fairly strong confidence letting me know with a transparent soft check here that this record should be coded, again, as non-responsive. It should not be a good pet. We take a close look right off the bat. On the top of this document with this box jellyfish, we can see that it tells me box jellyfish produce extremely potent venom. A particular few of them are among the most venomous creatures in the world. Stings from these and a few other species of the class are extremely painful and sometimes fatal to humans. So again, going through the iterations, the engine has learned very clearly and is very strongly suggesting that we should code this document as responsive. As a reviewer, I can simply code and move on to the next document in my batch. That's essentially it. Once I'm done my batch, they're all checked in. If we've not yet met our goals, the next iteration kicks off and new documents are presented to me. Couple of key things, of course. Can these confidence bars, these soft checks, be turned on or off in case you want to run this as a truly double-blind approach to your predictive review early on and really ensure the system is learning? Absolutely. Once again, one of the key strengths of Xera is the fact that it can be very flexible to your workflow. We also have a few other things that can be utilized within this. As opposed to just a straightforward batch-based iterative review, maybe you want to help seed the system. Maybe you will find key text, like we saw here on a document, that we want to add or highlight and ensure that the engine is learning from that text as well and isn't solely relying on the coding checks that are being placed. That's where Exemplar steps in. Now, to give you a little bit of an idea as to how Exemplar works, and maybe a quick refresher if you haven't yet seen that video, I come in out of my list view and I create up, by clicking my X here, an exemplar document. We'll see here I happen to have my good pet. Does this animal or will this animal make a good pet? And essentially, when you create an exemplar, all you simply need to do, give it a name for your virtual document, or your seed document as it were, and associate it with which issue. Once again, I've got a couple of different issues going on in this database. I simply pick and choose the issue and the tag that this will be associated with, and I save it. That's it. From here, I can click on my good pet, and I fill in the details. As you can see, we have a number of text boxes, and we can fill in as many as we like. Essentially creating my issue name. I have some text in here for a good pet where I thought, oh, this was a great description. This breed of dog is great with children, gentle, beautiful, very mellow, known to sleep for hours on hours, in search of a nice family pet. The Burmese mountain dog is definitely a good choice. Quirky, fun-loving dogs, craving love and affection. They love to lean against people, sit at their feet. Again, great description of text to help the system really understand what a good pet, the characteristics that should fit into that particular issue. From a user standpoint, incredibly easy to work with this as well. As we come through and we find our documents, if there's some key text somewhere within there, or the document itself, you just think, hey, this one really needs to stand out as that analytics engine is learning more and more about what is, in fact, in this case, responsive. All I simply need to do is click on my little exemplar icon and pick and choose which issue this is associated with. Click on Good Pet. Automatically, that's added in, and I move on. Once again, Xera strives to make this as efficient and as easy to review as possible. From here, our project managers, of course, can step in and begin looking, once an iterative round is done, to see how we're progressing. Are we getting close to our precision or our recall goals? And I can access those with my iView bars at the top. Simply flip over into my iView tab, and I'm going to create one here from scratch with a predictive review statistics bar. Swipe on over, grab the predictive review project. Which issue am I looking to deal with? I'll stick with my good pets inquiry here. And then we have a number of canned reports that we know are going to be very important to come in and take a look at. All my statistics by iteration, the precision, recall, and F1 score by iteration. And just as a very quick reminder here, we start talking about precision. This is really dealing with the accuracy of documents. I mean, officially you can say this is the ratio of documents categorized correctly as responsive to the total number of documents that were categorized as responsive. If your collection is low precision, it means that there are a number of non-responsive documents categorized as responsive, demonstrating that the computer's decisions are not very accurate yet. Once again, the accuracy. The recall, which deals more so with the scenario of, well, how many did you find? This is the ratio of responsive documents found and categorized correctly to the total number of responsive documents in the full collection. If you have low recall, this means that the computer has not yet found a number of those responsive documents. So once again, how many did you find? Precision is the accuracy, recall. How many of those did you find? As you can see here, I've checked off a simple bar chart. And we can see off of our legend, this lets me know what the precision recall F1 measure is for my responsive documents, as well as my non-responsive. Across the bottom, in the first iteration I've done, in the second iteration I've done. We set up a target bar here with my target recall and target precision. I set this on a simple demonstration database at 70%. And it lets me know in the first iteration, did pretty well. My precision was 84% on my responsiveness. I was still a little under with the non-responsiveness. The system didn't fully recall enough of the non-responsive documents. And of course, iView is dynamic. I can turn these on or off if I only want to look at my precision scores, for example. I can easily come in and take a closer look at that. I can add in the responsiveness scores, precision, recall, etc. if I decided instead of the bar chart, I wanted to take a look at this in more of a timeline chart. As we will recall from the iView video, I can adjust that into a number of different visual displays. Maybe I also want to come in here and take a closer look at my various iteration counts and what I end up seeing inside of that. Potentially I want to take a look at this in my timeline. Again, visually I can draw this up. As we take a good close look here, we can see, for example, that my non-responsive count from my first iteration to the second iteration spiked up dramatically. Similarly, with my responsiveness count. The documents that the system had uncategorized, didn't yet know what to do with, dropped almost in half between the two iterations. That's how quickly the system learned from one iteration into the next. And as we can see here with the lowest one, absolutely no conflicts as far as my responsiveness goes, either in responsive or non-responsive, meaning the system didn't predict a certain type of code that was then changed by the reviewer. So again, a tremendous amount of flexibility that comes into play with that. So once again, as we can see here, leveraging powerful machine learning technology with the intuitive workflow designed into iCONECT Xera's predictive review, we really can dramatically reduce the time and cost associated with legal discovery and the review process. An efficient review is always the goal. All from Exera, the system that works the way you think.